Hare Krishna devotees, today is Shloka number 10 of chapter 1 and welcome to Shloka a day. Aparyaptam tadasmakam
Aparyaptam tadasmakam
balam bhishmabhirakshitam
balam bhishmabhirakshitam
paryaptam tvidametesham
paryaptam tvidame-tesham
balam bhimabhirakshitam.
balam bhimabhirakshitam.
Word for word meaning. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Aparyaptam,
Aparyaptam,
immeasurable.
immeasurable.
Tat,
Tat,
that.
that.
Asmakam,
Asmakam,
of ours.
of ours.
Balam,
Balam,
strength.
strength.
Bhishma,
Bhishma,
by grandfather Bhishma.
by grandfather Bhishma.
Abhirakshitam,
Abhirakshitam,
perfectly protected.
perfectly protected.
Paryaptam,
Paryaptam,
limited.
limited.
To,
But
idam,
idam,
all this.
all this.
Etesham,
Etesham,
of the Pandavas.
of the Pandavas.
Balam,
Balam,
strength.
strength.
Bhima,
Bhima,
by Bhima.
by Bhima.
Abhirakshitam,
Abhirakshitam,
perfectly, carefully protected.
carefully protected.
Translation. Our strength is immeasurable
Our strength is immeasurable,
and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma.
and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma.
Whereas the strength of the Pandavas,
Whereas the strength of the Pandavas,
carefully protected by Bhima,
carefully protected by Bhima,
is limited.
is limited.
So Prabhupada writes here in this purport, herein, an estimation of the comparative strength is made by Duryodhana. What is Duryodhana doing here? He is comparing the strength of his army. It's protected by this great warrior called Grandfather Bhishma. And he's comparing it to the strength of the Pandava army, which is protected by, if you compare Bhishmadev to Bhima, you can't equate the two. He thinks that the strength of his armed forces is immeasurable, being specifically protected by the most experienced general, Grandfather Bhishma. On the other hand, the forces of the Pandavas are limited, being protected by a less experienced general, Bhima, who is like a fig in the presence of Bhishma. Duryodhana was always envious of Bhima because he knew perfectly well that if he should die at all, he would only be killed by Bhima. But at the same time, he was confident of his victory on account of the presence of Bhishma, who was a far superior general. His conclusion that he would come out of the battle victorious was well ascertained. In a sense, Duryodhana has now convinced himself, yes, we will be victorious simply because Bhishmadev is on our side and he is a far superior general when compared to Bhima. People who are situated in sattvic renunciation are not miserable in disagreeable circumstances, nor do they get attached to situations that are agreeable to them. They simply do their duty under all conditions, without feeling elated when the going is good or feeling dejected when life becomes tough. They are not like a dry leaf that is tossed hither and thither by every passing breeze. Instead, they are like the reeds in the sea, gently negotiating every rising and falling wave. While retaining their equanimity and without succumbing to anger, greed, envy, or attachment, they watch the waves of events rising and falling around them. Bal Gangadhar Tilak was a scholar of the Bhagavad Gita and a famous Karma Yogi. Before Mahatma Gandhi came on the scene, he was at the forefront of the freedom struggle of India. He was asked what position he would choose if India became independent, Prime Minister or Foreign Minister. He replied, "My ambition was to write a book on differential calculus. I will fulfill it." Once the police arrested him for creating unrest, he asked his friend to find out the provisions under which he was arrested and to inform him in prison. When the friend reached him after an hour, he was fast asleep in the jail. Another time, he was working in his office, and his clerk brought him the news that his elder son was seriously ill. Instead of getting emotionally wrought, he asked the clerk to get a doctor, and he continued working. Half an hour later, his friend came and conveyed the same news. He said, "I have called for the doctor to see him. What else can I do?" These instances reveal how he retained his composure despite being in the midst of tumultuous situations. He was able to continue performing his actions because of the internal emotional composure. Had he been emotionally distressed, he would have been unable to sleep in the jail cell or concentrate on his work at the office. So here, what can we derive from this particular shloka? That Duryodhana is certainly nervous. So sometimes you can put up an act of false bravery, right? So here, Duryodhana is trying to convince himself that indeed they will be victorious. So His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu writes, at the start of the Bhagavad Gita, Duryodhana assesses the strengths of the two armies assembled on the Kurukshetra battle. Therein he mentions the principal warriors on both sides, but forgets to mention Krishna. His neglecting Krishna is understandable because Krishna had declared he would be a non-combatant. So Duryodhana thought that Krishna's presence wouldn't matter, and he focused on comparing the material arrangements of the two opposing forces. But while overlooking Krishna, Duryodhana forgot what Krishna's presence on the opposite side signified. It signified that the Pandavas were in harmony with the spiritual principle of devotion. While we ourselves can do some good, we can do far more good if we become willing instruments for the Supreme. His plan is far better than ours. In fact, the Gita assures Arjuna of victory if he fights as an instrument for Krishna. In the 33rd shloka of the 11th chapter, the Lord, when Arjuna asks the Lord, who are you and why are you here? And Krishna says, I am time. I have come here to annihilate anybody except a few of the Pandavas and maybe a couple of the Kauravas. And then he says, all you can do is but be an instrument in my hand, Arjuna, because I have already decided that people will die. I was listening to an interesting podcast today about how you can read the verses of the Mahabharata and Ramayana and figure out which countries they are referring to, who traveled where, who came from where, etc. So it's a nice podcast from a historical perspective. And in that podcast, the person who's doing all of this research, he's a person of Indian origin. Seemed to have dived into so many different topics like history and metaphysics and connecting it to science, etc. And he was saying, as per the estimation of what he has read in the Mahabharata, that if 40 million soldiers were there on the battlefield, 99.9% of them died. And he was talking about, based on the reading of Mahabharata, that soldiers came from as far away countries as Iraq, Syria, Iran on the west, to the west of India. And to the east of India, soldiers came all the way from Indonesia and beyond. So he was just talking about how Krishna has already said in the Bhagavad Gita, he's already put to death all of these people, except for a few. So that many men died on the battlefield. It's not a small number. In fact, Krishna desists from fighting personally so that he can give his devotees like Arjuna the opportunity to act on his behalf and get the resulting glory. Now, this is very fascinating aspect of the Supreme Lord. It's not that the Lord could not have killed everybody up front and prevented this war. Just got done with it. Krishna could have simply said, hey, I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All of you are dead tomorrow. Done, over. But the Lord is so caring for his devotees. He always wants to put his devotees in a good light. You know? So he wanted the Pandavas and specifically Arjuna to get credit for the victory. And then, of course, the subsequent glory that comes with such a great victory. He didn't want the credit for himself. So if you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, when Arjuna has visited Dwaraka, and he hears that Krishna has left the material world and gone back to the spiritual world, he's obviously very despondent, because they were good friends. When Arjuna comes back to Hastinapur and explains to Yudhishthir what had happened, he tells Yudhishthir in one of the shlokas that, see, all along I was thinking I was a great warrior, that I was famous and it was because of my practice and my determination, and it was because I had put in the effort. I was a good student, endless hours of practice. And then he confesses that he could not protect Krishna's wives at all. He says, I was defeated like I was nobody. And he tells Yudhishthir that I now recognize that all that strength was actually given to me by Krishna. So he realizes and comes to the conclusion that I was not the doer at all. Yes, I got the credit, I got the glory, but it was actually Krishna doing everything. So hence, here Chaitanya Charan Prabhu is writing very nicely. Krishna took a vow that he would not fight. It's not that he could not have taken care of the situation, but he wants his devotee to get the credit. This empowering devotional dynamism is completely missed by the materialistic assessment of self-obsessed characters like Duryodhana, who bank on material superiority for victory. So you can certainly use the word obsessed with Duryodhana. He was obsessed. He had to be the king, and Pandavas should be, defeated or sent to Vanavas. He was that addicted to power. Duryodhana was oblivious to the power of inner alignment through the spiritual principle of devotion. Worse still, he was also massively misaligned with that principle. He had brazenly defied Krishna time and again. This delusion of Duryodhana spelled his doom, which is indirectly conveyed in the Gita's concluding prophecy, which is that wherever there is Krishna and Arjuna, there will always be victory. Yes, and there will always be prosperity. So it was Duryodhana's self-absorption that caused his self-destruction. When we face life's challenges, we may succumb to the Duryodhana delusion by assessing things only materially. Instead, if we strive to stay spiritually aligned by practicing Bhakti Yoga, we will get the grace to overcome those challenges. When facing life's challenges, see not just the outer arrangement of material powers, but also the inner alignment with spiritual principles. So yes, we will all be faced with challenges. How do we respond to those challenges? And how do we get back on our feet and stay always aligned to Krishna? That is the most important thing. Anyway, here in this particular shloka, Duryodhana is comparing how great a general Bhismadeva is. And he is assuring himself and Dronacharya, I think we are in a good place, compared to the Pandavas. Pandavas essentially don't stand a chance. Why does he come to this conclusion? He has not acknowledged Krishna on the other side. He's thinking, Krishna is not going to lift a weapon. So I already am assured of victory. Did Krishna need a weapon to destroy the Kauravas? No. He can arrange things in so many different ways. So it's the folly of thinking that I am all powerful, not recognizing the Supreme Lord is still on the other side. If he's the Supreme Lord, obviously it means he can do anything. So can you imagine a person being so conceited like Duryodhana? He's boasting here. Maybe out of nervousness, maybe out of fear, maybe out of just sheer conceit. But this is the essence of this shloka, the 10th shloka.
If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell notification. If you'd like to join our classes every day, please check the details in the description section of this video. We look forward to serving you.